It is not every day that an explorer stumbles across a frozen human body while out on an expedition, and it's even less likely that the body belongs to a person who is still alive. What could this message mean? Was this an attempted murder, or was there something else going on here? Let's take a look at this bizarre discovery and all of the details surrounding it. Luckily, his fall was cushioned by snow, so he didn't suffer any broken bones. They would have to leave him on the mountain and hope for the best. This isn't an uncommon practice among mountaineers. In many cases, it is better to let the elements claim your life than to put another person's life at risk trying to save you. But that's when things started getting weird. Despite being dead for 16 years, the man's cell phone was still on his person. Not only that, but the battery was fully charged. The German climbers stayed with their fallen comrade as long as they could, but eventually they too had to leave to avoid freezing themselves. What made this even stranger is that Benno had no known connection to the area or the people who had climbed the mountain. Fateful day in 2003. This was back in 2002. For over a year, nobody had heard from him. Had he gone off the grid, or was he planning something sinister? Some believe that Benno was the victim of foul play, that he was murdered and then left on the mountain to be discovered 16 years later. But if this was the case, why was he carrying his cell phone, and why did he leave it on airplane mode? The most plausible explanation is that Benno took his own life. He had been engaging in risky behavior online, such as posting videos of himself performing dangerous stunts. What was Benno doing on that mountain? Why did he leave his phone on airplane mode? And why did he bother writing the message in the ice? Whether Benno took his own life or was murdered on that fateful day in 2003, it's clear that there is more to the story than meets the eye. Perhaps there are other bodies buried in the snow, waiting to be discovered and the truth uncovered. From his cryptic message in the ice to his strange behavior in the years leading up to his death, this case is full of twists and turns that defy explanation. With that said, thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in next time for more. Unfortunately, we may never know the answers to these questions. It's possible that he was seeking attention or validation from others, but ultimately these actions only led to him being harassed and threatened by strangers on the internet. This cyberbullying drove him to become increasingly reclusive and depressed, which eventually led to him taking his own life. And as a way to cover up his tracks, he wrote the message on the ice, pretending that he had been there all along. It read, "I am lying here voluntarily." After all, he had been reported missing in 2002, but the police had done nothing to find him. There was no evidence of foul play, and his family was adamant that he would never harm himself. So, the case was eventually closed. While this may seem like a strange thing to write, it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Well, it seems that his true identity was far from what his family and friends believed. It was revealed that Benno had been struggling with severe depression for quite some time. He had been seeing a therapist regularly and even admitted to having suicidal thoughts on occasion. But this didn't make any sense to his family and friends. He had a good job, a loving fiancé, and a bright future ahead of him. Why would he end his own life? The man was clearly trying to send a message to search and rescue teams. By writing this, he was hoping to be saved, even though he might have been dead for quite some time already. Authorities were baffled, and they struggled to come up with a motive for why someone would fake their death and then lie on a mountain in the Swiss Alps. And to add another layer of mystery to this already puzzling case, his family had no idea that he had even gone missing. The man had eaten a sandwich just hours before he died, which explained how he had kept his strength up while stranded on the mountain. But this detail raised another question. How could he have possibly made a sandwich if he had been frozen solid? However, he did hit his head and passed out immediately after landing. His climbing companions rushed to his aid, but they soon realized that he wasn't going to make it. He was suffering from a serious concussion and bleeding heavily. But this was exactly what happened to one climber when he discovered a strange body in the Swiss Alps. When the man's family was notified about the body that had been found, they claimed that this must have been a case of mistaken identity. According to his family, Benno had been a happy and healthy young man who had recently graduated from university and started working as a banker. He was engaged to be married, and everything in his life seemed to be going well. There was no reason for him to fake his own death. What's even more baffling is that the frozen man had a modern iPhone, and there was a mysterious message scratched into the ice next to him. On June 2019, a tourist discovered a mummified body on the same mountain that had been the site of the deadly climbing accident. The frozen man was dressed in modern clothing, including a blue jacket and dark pants. To confirm that this was indeed a human body, the police even had to use a helicopter to get up close enough to take a look at him. On August 2003, a group of German tourists were visiting the Swiss Alps. Among them was a 47-year-old man from Hamburg named Peter. As experienced climbers, they decided to tackle the Gornergrat, one of the most famous mountaineering sites in Switzerland. The mountain towers over the town of Zermatt at 3,088 meters above sea level. It offers stunning views of the Matterhorn and other Swiss Alps peaks, but it's also an extremely difficult climb. While the tourists were taking in the view, however, tragedy struck. One of the tourists fell. Knowing that their friend wouldn't survive the night in the cold temperatures, the group made a difficult decision. What happened to the climber that fell remains unknown. His body was never recovered until 16 years later, when a shocking discovery was made. The body was taken down the mountain for further examination, and it was soon discovered that the man had died from blunt force trauma, likely from the fall that the climbers had described. Authorities quickly identified the phone as belonging to a man named Benno, who lived near Zurich. Benno's phone was checked, and it was discovered that the last call he had ever made was to his father. After the autopsy results came back, it was clear that this was far from a normal case. It turns out that the man had used his teeth to scratch a message into the ice next to him. But there are even more disturbing details surrounding this case, and this is where the conspiracy theories start. Some people have criticized the police for not doing enough to investigate Benno's disappearance. So, why was Benno planning to kill himself on a mountain? It was later discovered that Benno had been living a double life. In the end, Benno's death was ruled as suicide. But there are still many unanswered questions surrounding this strange case. But one thing is for sure, this was one bizarre case that will continue to baffle investigators for years to come. As we continue to piece together the events that unfolded on that mountain over a decade ago, we can't help but wonder what other secrets the frozen wilderness is hiding. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to check out more content.